Hi guys, welcome to episode 4 of this series, which is focusing on how to play as heroes and villains on Star Wars Battlefront 2. If you are enjoying the series so far, please leave me a like, also subscribe if you want to see more of this content in the future. This week I'm going to be showing you how to dominate Galactic Assault as Darth Vader. Usually I would show you lots of different footage, however this week I will be focusing predominantly on one long piece of footage where I go on a good kill streak as Vader. I do have some other smaller pieces of footage at the end, but I feel this clip really showcases everything I have to say about Vader. As with all heroes, Vader has 3 abilities. Firstly, his focused rage ability sees Vader tap into the dark side by utilising his rage and anger to increase his primary lightsaber attack. This ability also increases Vader's damage resistance whilst it is active. Vader also has access to saber throw. This is pretty self-explanatory, but upon activation, this sees Vader throw his lightsaber in front of him, damaging any enemies it makes contact with. Eventually, the saber returns to Vader, also damaging enemies on its return journey. Finally, Vader can also use Force Choke. When triggered, Vader lifts all enemies in range up in the air whilst gradually choking and damaging them. As with all Force users, Vader can also jump higher than ordinary troopers, and of course, he is equipped with his red lightsaber. Vader does have some unbelievable strengths that make him stand out from other heroes. First of all, he is an absolute tank. He starts with 900 health, which is more than any other hero or villain in the game, and this can be increased even further with star cards. Combine this with the fact that as a Force user he can regenerate a large percentage of his health, and the net result is that Vader can take a whole lot of damage before enemies begin cutting into health that cannot be regenerated. As if that wasn't enough, Vader's lightsaber also has the highest damage output of any lightsaber wielder in the game. It does 120 damage, and when combined with focus rage, this number goes up to 135. Compare this to Yoda's measly 80 damage, and the result is pretty emphatic. Even compared to Luke, Ren and Maul's 100 base damage, Vader still has a significant advantage. Vader's saber throw is also a major strength, for a variety of reasons. First of all, it is thrown horizontally, as opposed to Maul's saber throw, which is thrown vertically. This makes it easy to aim, and also means it has a wider damage area. It also does 150 damage upon contact, meaning you will kill all ordinary troopers in one throw, with the exception of heavies. It also travels its full distance when thrown, even if it hits an enemy, meaning that it can hit multiple enemies in one throw. And this also means that it can do even more damage on its return to Vader by hitting enemies twice. This means it can deal 300 damage to a trooper in one throw, and not even heavies can withstand that amount of punishment. The most important thing about this ability is it gives Vader the opportunity to continue dealing damage even if he cannot get really close to his enemies. With a certain star card, he can actually increase the range of his saber throw, and it really does cover quite a lot of distance. Overall, Vader's strengths mean that both at long and close range, Vader has incredible offensive and defensive capabilities. At this point, you're probably thinking that Vader is pretty much invincible. However, believe it or not, he has some pretty fatal flaws. First of all, his Force Choke can be a recipe for disaster, so much so that when used incorrectly, it can actually be Vader's biggest weakness. Firstly, when Vader activates this, he is unable to block blaster fire. He also cannot dash or run. He can move, but only very slowly. He also cannot cancel the ability, meaning if you activate this, the ability will keep going for what seems like an eternity. The only way it stops before running its full duration is if you kill all of the enemies being choked by Vader. If a trooper catches Vader doing this, then he is literally a sitting duck. You will be vanguarded in seconds, no question about it. I see it all the time, and I have been on the receiving end of it too. I would say at least half the time I see Vader being killed, it is because of this. Vader's second weakness is his mobility, or rather, lack of it. He literally runs as if he is dragging a fridge on his back. Combine this with the fact that he is a pretty big target, and this means that Vader is not exactly an escape artist. Even his jump is really slow and drawn out, and even with a large health pool, it is very easy to get overwhelmed as Vader, and when this happens, it can be very difficult to flee. As you have seen with all of my hero videos so far, fleeing is a really important element of playing as a hero in Battlefront 2. The last weakness is only small, I guess, and some of you may dismiss it, but it's just based on my own observations. Everyone seems to be out to get you when you're playing as Vader, more so than any other hero or villain. There seems to be something gloriously cinematic about killing the most notorious villain in the Star Wars universe. Everyone wants to be the guy that killed Vader. Because of this, I literally feel like I am almost always taking damage when playing as Vader. Now let's move on to the most important part of this video, how to use Vader when playing Galactic Assault. I said at the beginning of this series that I am not going to spend too much time on star cards, and this is mainly because not everyone has the time to craft and upgrade them. However, there are some exceptions to this. Vader has a certain star card that allows him to regenerate some of his base health every time he kills an enemy. If you plan to use Vader a lot, then I really recommend you craft this card and upgrade it. It means if you do lose a lot of health, you can play slightly more conservatively by picking off troopers one by one with your saber attack, thus allowing you to regain your health. Many of my best kill streaks with Vader would have ended far earlier than they did if I had not invested in this star card. You will notice on the footage that when playing as Vader I use saber throw all the time, even when I'm only facing single enemies. I do this because first of all, I know that it will one hit kill most enemies, and second of all, it is a perfect response to the most frustrating lightsaber counter in the game. Yes, the roll. A good player can use the roll to avoid your primary lightsaber strikes and deal an incredible amount of damage to you. It's all a little bit silly, as I'm sure you know, but even so you need to take it seriously. By using the lightsaber throw, it's much harder for troopers to roll away, and strangely enemies seem to forget that Vader has this ability. I can't remember too many times when enemy players have had the foresight to attempt to roll away from this ability before being struck down. This strategy is made more plausible because of the fact that the saber throw has a really short cooldown time, meaning you can use it often. It also deals 30 more damage than Vader's primary attack, as we have already discussed. This doesn't mean I won't ever use primary lightsaber attacks, but I'll combine this with the saber throw to make sure enemies don't have an opportunity to dodge my attacks and damage me considerably in the process. Just get into the habit of using this ability whenever it's available and you'll improve your skills with Vader, and you will find yourself killing more players whilst also losing less health. Also, you will see me use the saber throw a lot at choke points, including narrow corridors. Doing this can kill multiple enemies in one go without having to sacrifice much health, as I often peek out, throw the saber, then quickly get back to cover. I find this strategy very effective. My next piece of advice concerns Vader's force choke. Bearing in mind the problems we discussed about this ability earlier, you have to be really careful to only use this at appropriate times. Honestly, I would recommend that you don't ever use this against enemy troopers. It can be really tempting to ignore this advice, especially if your saber throw is cooling down and you see an enemy running away. I also see lots of players do it when faced with groups of enemies, but unless you get this absolutely right, it will go horribly wrong, I guarantee it. If you try it against a group of enemies but miss one or more, then the said players will kill you quickly, knowing that you are absolutely powerless to do anything about it. Even if you suspect that you can get away with it against one trooper, it still isn't worth the risk. All it takes is one enemy to see you doing this and you will be dead. However, the ability is not completely useless, as it can be very, very effective against heroes in certain situations. If you manage to execute this ability successfully against a hero, then they are as good as dead as whilst they are floating in the air being damaged by you, they will also likely be being shot at by your allies. This ability really is a terrifying hero killer in the right hands. You'll see me use this a few times in some of today's footage, and my general strategy is to make sure when I activate the ability, I have good cover from enemies and I am in close proximity to my teammates, who should deal with anyone who tries to damage me whilst I am using the force choke. Sometimes this ability won't kill a hero before the ability runs out, and when this happens I activate focused rage when I have finished the force choke, and then I finish off the hero with my lightsaber. In this video alone, you will see me do this successfully to Finn, Luke, Yoda and Han Solo, and as you can see, they really didn't stand a chance. Even without the force choke, Vader is still an absolute monster against other heroes, especially lightsaber wielding heroes. No one can match his health stats or his lightsaber damage, and so if an enemy hero is foolish enough to stand toe to toe with you, feel free to fight fire with fire, and if you are both simply mashing primary lightsaber attack, you will win every time. Obviously, this is assuming your health is still intact. This point should be pretty obvious, but even so it is really important, so I'm going to make it. Vader must not spend lots of time out in the open. This is quite simply because of his lack of mobility. He is a very easy target to hit, and if you're running slowly around maps like Hoth, Crate or Kashyyyk on their first phases, you will slowly get picked off. You're also very likely to be targeted by vehicles who can finish off heroes like Vader really quickly. Vader excels in small covered areas, such as in corridors, small rooms or tunnels, where his lack of speed is much less of an issue. If you stick to these sorts of areas, you should be able to dominate enemies even without the assistance of your teammates. Whenever you enter these sorts of areas, activate your focused rage before engaging with enemies with both your saber throw and your primary lightsaber attack, and you'll be able to clear out small areas very quickly. Obviously, you need to recognise that Vader is not absolutely invincible, however you should still be brave when using him, safe in the knowledge that he is an absolute tank. If used properly, he is a wrecking ball. Make sure that if you are trying to close the gap to enemies, you use Vader's dash. This still doesn't make him much quicker, but it is much better than his really slow run, and it should give you at least some evasive capabilities. I haven't spoken much about focus rage in this video, because it's really self-explanatory. Make sure you activate this whenever you feel you are going to engage enemies with your lightsaber, and when you feel overwhelmed, as the ability allows Vader to take more damage. Also, always use it before engaging enemy heroes, as it gives you a huge advantage over them in terms of damage output. Overall, I don't think it's absolutely critical to mastering Vader. It's just a nice little bonus that slightly increases his defensive and offensive capabilities. That's going to be it for today's video, guys. If you have enjoyed it, please leave me a like. I would also welcome any comments concerning what I have said. Maybe you have something extra to say about how to play as Vader. If you are enjoying this series so far, please also subscribe. Next week I'll be looking at Finn. I'm also working on a special video where I give advice on how to do well on heroes versus villains.
We succeed or fail here.